On the show today, we turn our attention to the quarterback position, explaining why Louisville's ceiling is directly tied together with Tyler Shough's production. Also discussing some interesting comments made by Jeff Brom regarding who the QB2 will be. All that and more coming up on today's episode of Locked On Louisville.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what is going on? Welcome into this Monday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. As always, I want to personally thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. We begin our football positional preview series on this episode of the show, starting with the quarterback position. We'll explain why Louisville's ceiling is directly tied together with Tyler Shough's production. Who will QB2 be? Jeff Brom explained what his thought process was in a press conference on Monday and shed light on who that QB2 will be. We'll also discuss what the depth chart could look like and more. I gave you all the option to pick which series you wanted to begin first between the football positional preview series, ranking the top 15 individual players, and the three-part schedule breakdown. You all chose the positional preview series. So how that will go for the duration of this series, we'll talk about some of the key storylines regarding each position, the newcomer expectations, what the depth chart could look like. Each positional preview won't look the same because of the personnel in each group, the moving parts in the positions, etc. But we begin with the quarterback side of things, and it's fairly clear to me that Louisville's ceiling is directly tied to Tyler Shough's production. It is critical that Shough has a solid season in which he is healthy and effective. Let's go back to last season. Louisville won 10 regular season games, and I know they struggled down the stretch and lost their last 3, but the Cardinals were a good team. They had a good defense for the most part. The rushing attack was pretty potent, especially when Jawar Jordan was healthy. When he wasn't, it lost a key member to the rotation, but Isaac Guerrero was more than serviceable in the Cardinals' backfield. And you had a quarterback that did what he needed to do, and the Cardinals won 10 games. Louisville was a good team. But it was clear that this wasn't the only issue, because I think that you can point to the offensive line at times. Receivers struggled to get open. There were dropped passes. The defense wasn't really getting a ton of pass rush, and it hurt the secondary, and Louisville was giving up a ton of points. But one of the main reasons why Louisville was a good team, not a great team in 2023, was quarterback play. Jack Plummer was what he needed to be for the Cardinals. He was, I use the term game manager a lot, which you can go with that. Plummer made some throws that you needed him to make during the season. But when opposing defenses figured Louisville out toward the end of the year, they loaded the box and dared the Cardinals to throw the ball. The offense struggled. I remember mentioning that after the Virginia game, thinking to myself, I really hope that the Cavaliers didn't just lay out the blueprint as to how to beat Louisville. And unfortunately, in our case, they did just that. And Louisville really wasn't able to do much more. They did beat Miami, which was great. But offensively, the Cardinals being one-dimensional through the majority of the season didn't really help everything. So I say that Louisville can be a good team in 2024 with a good running attack, which I believe that they'll have, with a solid defense, which I believe that they'll have, and with a quarterback that does, as expected, the bottom line, which I believe that they will have a quarterback that can fill those needs. But to be a great team that reaches their ceiling, the Cardinals need, let's just call it how it is, improved and much more effective quarterback play. A quarterback that has a better feel for the pocket, makes the right reads, goes through his progressions and check downs, and sometimes takes what the defense gives him, but other times stretches the field. Louisville wasn't really all that explosive last season passing because Jack Plummer struggled to throw the ball down the field. Now, again, it's not all on Plummer. There were a good amount of problems circulating around receivers not being able to get open. And then offensive line play at the end sort of struggled to keep Plummer upright. But nonetheless, I think everyone would agree that the passing offense has to be better. And you also factor in the rumors that Jeff Brom wasn't able to open up the whole playbook like he wanted due to quarterback play. So it all really makes sense. The schedule's tougher this season. You go on the road to Clemson, Notre Dame. Miami's supposed to be better. You still have Kentucky on the schedule. SMU's not going to be a slouch. Georgia Tech is going to be improved, etc. Your schedule is better. 12-team playoff. To get there, the quarterback play has to be much better. Tyler Shough has to be, I would say, probably a top 6, arguably top 5 quarterback in the conference to make a return trip to Charlotte and be able to make the first college football play, first 12-team college football playoff. Shough was brought to Louisville because Jeff Brom and company believed in the upside. There was a lot of risk. There still is a lot of risk surrounding taking Tyler Shough. It was never a doubt of talent. Shough is extremely talented, but this will be his 6th season of college football, and the majority of it he has spent injured. Now, we have said time and time again on this show that these injuries have been more so freak accidents rather than recurring issues like broken tibia, ACL tear. I forget exactly what some of the injuries he had, but the broken tibia is the one that he is rehabbing from now. He's going to be 100% for the fall, and you don't really have to worry about that. But one key thing that has to happen is that for Tyler Shough to be great on the field, he has to stay healthy. The best ability is availability at the end of the day, and this is all a moot conversation if the Cardinals signal caller is on the sidelines. So the 6'5" native of Chandler, Arizona, not only has to stay healthy, but he has to show that he can play with that same level of effectiveness that we have, seen him play with throughout his college career at times. When he's been on the field, he's been very, very good, not only as a passer, but as a dual threat runner. So if you bring that skill set to the equation, you make your running game more deadly. You open up the passing game where you arguably, I don't really think it's arguably, I think that you did make improvements overall to the receiving core, both wide receiver and tight end. And I think that you can definitely have a way better passing attack. So being able to open the playbook up, the opportunity to have a guy that can throw the ball downfield better. And Tyler Shough showed in the spring game that, he has solid touch on the deep ball, great feel for the pocket. He's a wise, older, veteran quarterback. But make no mistake about it. If Louisville wants to reach their ceiling, which arguably is making the college football playoff, Shough has to be productive and effective. I was going to use the term as good as advertised, but I think that there are some disagreements on what that would entail because Shough is talented, but the production really isn't there because of the really unlucky and just straight brutal injury history that he has had. So you could have some disagreements there. So I didn't want to go with as good as advertised because it's challenging to define what that looks like. Statistically speaking, do you think that he can reach Jack Plummer's numbers from last season? Yeah, I would say that if he doesn't, then I mean it's kind of going to be rough. Although I will say that Shough is going to run the ball a little bit more than Plummer, but looking at college stats from this past season, Jack Plummer threw for 3,200 yards, 21 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. No doubt in my mind that Shough can get over that passing yards number if he stays healthy. The touchdown number could be sort of close to similar because of the rushing attack that Shough brings. And if he can not have double-digit interceptions, then you are in for a successful season. So to start out previewing the quarterback position, we have to really address, how important Shough is to the team. Now, granted, quarterback is the most important position on the field, but with everything considered, I think that there is a lot of emphasis on very effective quarterback play, especially in the passing game. But one of the main discussion points over the offseason would be who serves as Shough's primary backup at QB2? Well, Jeff Brom identified who that would be today if the Cardinals needed to go past Shough. And we'll discuss Jeff Brom's press conference comments and why what he said will be something that Cardinal fans are excited to hear. We'll discuss after we tell you about our friends over at Gametime. With the NCAA and NFL seasons coming up very quickly, just a couple months away, and with MLB in full swing, it's time that you make Gametime a part of your game day experience. If you're a person like me who struggles to find tickets that I believe are matching the value, you need to follow suit and download the Gametime app. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of MLB, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. Now, I've utilized Gametime a couple times for NFL, for college football, but I just downloaded the app and bought tickets to the Los Angeles Chargers New Orleans Saints game in October, and I'm kind of kicking myself for not downloading the app earlier. There's a lot of benefits like all-in pricing, which shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, and there's also the lowest price guarantee. Either you will get that or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Cardinal fans, before we get into the next segment, I do want to once again ask that you check out Locked On Sports Today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. What is going on? Welcome back in to the Locked On Louisville podcast. Heading into the second segment, Jeff Brom met with the media on Monday afternoon to sort of talk about some of the developments throughout the offseason. Not really much going on, just some updates on individual player health that we've been kind of monitoring and some other questions of position battles moving forward. I thought that this press conference couldn't have came at a better time as it relates to this particular position preview because the quarterback position was brought up. Now, I know that there are some that didn't want to believe early on that Tyler Shough was brought in to be the starter at Louisville. That was always going to be the case. Louisville was going to go to the transfer portal and get a one-year veteran quarterback that could be the bridge to the next wave, which you hope is one of the players in the group of Pierce Clarkson, Brady Allen, Deuce Adams, and potentially Harrison Bailey. So they brought in Tyler Shough, and I remember people saying, well, no, he's not going to be the starter. You have to give Pierce Clarkson his props and an opportunity. And I made it very clear that, yes, you were still going to do that, but the intention from this staff was to bring in a veteran to be the starter like you did with Jack Plummer, because the team has seen all these quarterbacks throughout the season, and they still felt the need to go to the portal. But the question was asked on who the backup was going to be. And Jeff Brom said it very clearly that they didn't have a clear-cut number two, but this is the quote of the episode. Right now, Pierce Clarkson would be the next guy in. That is something that Cardinal fans will rejoice when they hear. Because since he stepped foot on campus, Pierce Clarkson has been a fan favorite, known for his role as a player recruiter in the 5L23 class, but having a highly ranked quarterback and being the guy for multiple seasons, that was the hope for the Cardinal fans, in the fan base that wanted to see him be the successor to Jack Plummer. And some people were upset that Louisville went out and got Tyler Shough because they felt it would mean that Pierce Clarkson would transfer out. And honestly, I didn't know if he was going to or not. And I'm glad that he is stuck with it because it seems like that hard work is paying off. Now, there has always been some concerns as to whether or not he's going to be the guy, because it doesn't seem like Pierce Clarkson fits like a Jeff Brom molded quarterback, being just about 6 foot tall. Jeff Brom quarterbacks are taller, but Clarkson is mobile, which I think helps his case. And I think it's going to directly affect how he's going to play this season. As of right now, it's up in the air as to what that's going to look like. Just because you're QB2 doesn't really mean anything in a vacuum other than being insurance if QB1 goes down. Now, it's significant, but it's not significant to the point to where Clarkson's going to play a ton, but he will play. It's not set in stone, but Clarkson will see playing time this season in certain packages. The Cardinals are going to utilize multiple quarterbacks in games. Specifically, I think that you're going to see the quote-unquote Evan Conley package that Pierce Clarkson will likely play in that wild card situation where the read option to where, he's going to utilize his legs. Pierce Clarkson, probably the best dual threat quarterback on the roster. I think that he has made strides. He's worked hard to improve. He has put in the effort and has gotten better. And I think that it showed a little bit in the spring game. Now, is he ready to be QB1 if Louisville were to call his name? Now, that is something of note. There's something to note as to whether or not that would be the case. But at this point, I think that contextually speaking, this is good news for Louisville fans that were wanting to see Pierce Clarkson potentially be the successor. Because I think for all intents and purposes, if Jeff Brom is confident that he can give the reins of QB1 to a guy on this roster after this year, he would definitely do that. Like, the focus here and the intention is to not have to go to the transfer portal for a one-year stopgap every season. You best believe that Jeff Brom wants to have a multiple-year starter on this team that he can develop throughout their respective college career. With Clarkson being named QB2, now it is only July 8th, so you still have to go through camp. You have to go through the summer or the fall workouts. So take everything with a grain of salt here, because some of these position battles won't really be settled until that right as that first game. And even when the first game rolls around, you have two non-Power 5 opponents in Austin Peay and Jacksonville State that there's a chance that you're going to see maybe every quarterback on the roster. And Clarkson will need to come in and make sure that he leaves a lasting impression with his performance, and he gets to a spot to where he can be relied upon to be QB2. But just that, Clarkson has gone through the spring practices and the offseason up until this point, and he is looked at as QB2, it is significant. But what does this mean for guys like Brady Allen and Harrison Bailey? Well, Jeff Brom discussed every quarterback, or those four in particular, in the press conference, and he made another interesting remark that I think will sort of paint a picture as to how Louisville will, address the quarterback position moving forward this season, and we will identify what that remark is coming up here in the next segment. Into the final segment of this Monday evening edition of the show. Appreciate everyone for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. Also appreciate everyone for dealing with or, accepting my sinuses at the moment. I feel like my voice has been scratchy. It's been challenging to talk for 25 to 30 minutes straight, but we're getting through it. Kentucky pollen is putting up Lamar Jackson 2016 Heisman Trophy winning numbers against my sinus, as you can tell by the abundance of bags under my eyes. But nonetheless, we move and we just keep chugging through it. Louisville's depth chart, this is a weird positional preview breakdown because the depth chart is almost like creating itself. You know that Tyler Shough is number 1. At this point, Pierce Clarkson is number 2, according to Brom, even though he says there's no clear-cut number 2, but if he had to send someone else in, it would be Pierce Clarkson. So at this point, we're going to put him as number 2. And I think 3, the third person on the chart, is probably like a or situation, like player X or player Y, where it's up in the air, like between Harrison Bailey and Brady Allen. And then I think that Deuce Adams is obviously a redshirt candidate, but could see time early in blowouts while he preserves his redshirt. One thing that Jeff Brom made clear, he delivered a remarkable line that if you come away with any, quotes from his press conference, the first one is that Pierce Clarkson is the number 2. The second one is, he says, at some point, they're all going to play. What that looks like, we don't know. Could it be like last season, like the Murray State game, to where you get a comfortable lead in that first game against Austin Peay or against Jacksonville State, and you have the luxury to play your backups to where you'll give Pierce Clarkson a couple of series. You'll give Harrison Bailey a couple series. You'll give Brady Allen a couple series. Now, I think that you might see players get multiple series, unlike last season, because there is no Evan Conley. There's no Brock Doman. You replace those two with Deuce Adams. So just by the numbers game, you might get more opportunity for some of those other guys. But he says that they're all going to play. Now, it's pretty clear that you can't play 3 quarterbacks a game every game of the season. I think that the ideal situation is that Tyler Shough is the starting quarterback. You have Pierce Clarkson with his designed run pass option packages, and Brady Allen and Harrison Bailey at this point being insurance pieces. What did he say about both of those guys? He started out with Harrison Bailey, saying that the former UNLV transfer, the highly ranked player as a high school recruit, said had a good offseason, good spring, good summer. He's not as mobile as the other quarterbacks on the roster, but he can throw the ball and he understands the system. A veteran quarterback that he has confidence that if his number is called, he can make the throws. There's a pocket of this fan base that is 100% convinced that Harrison Bailey is the best quarterback on this team, and it is not even up for discussion. I don't really agree with that stance. I think that Bailey is talented, and if his number was called, I do think that he could be serviceable. But I don't think he's the best quarterback on this team. So I think that it's being shown now that I think Bailey is definitely going to be quality depth, because you do have to have that. I mean, we see injuries hit teams in different ways to where you could be down multiple quarterbacks. So it is critical that you have multiple guys that can come in and be serviceable. Brady Allen, a little bit of a different take on this. Jeff Brom says that he needs to work on playing natural, fluid, and athletic. The talent is there. Allen understands the system. This is his third season with Jeff Brom, one at Purdue, two at Louisville now. So you've got a guy that understands the system. He understands what the coaching staff is looking for. He's familiar with this staff. But at this point, it's just a matter of when he gets in the game to make the most out of every opportunity. And I feel like he had some moments in the spring game, but Pierce Clarkson was probably the most impressive of the three backup quarterbacks. So I think that it's really challenging to see how a player is going to rise up the depth chart because you have QB1. Unless Tyler Shough comes out of the gate and he just struggles, or he can't stay healthy, or a little bit of column A, column B, and then you put Pierce Clarkson in, and it's more the same to where Clarkson isn't really ever able to, solidify himself as the go-to guy. Maybe then you turn your attention to Brady Allen and Harrison Bailey. It's pretty ironic, because as challenging as it is to get up the depth chart, we've seen things change so quickly when it comes to situations on the football field, because it is a contact sport where guys get hurt. If players don't perform up to their standard level of play, then you could see a change at the spot. It will be a position of focus heading into the fall workouts and, the preseason, so to speak. I'm interested to see if Pierce Clarkson remains Jeff Brom's go-to guy at QB2. I want to see what his role is going to look like. I do like that we're sort of seeing like Bobby 1.0 type situations where you see that second quarterback getting some opportunities. And I think that Clarkson's going to get more opportunities than Evan Conley and Brock Doman did this past year, especially if Louisville was winning games. But how much are we going to see him? Are Brady Allen and Harrison Bailey both on the outside looking in? At this point, I would say yes, but what is true on July 8th might not be true on September 8th. What will happen in the first couple of games? Louisville, for the first time, or not for the first time, one of the only times since 2016, they open up with a non-Power 5 opponent, two non-Power 5 opponents, and then they have a bye week in between the second and third game, which, man, that's really, really odd to me, but nonetheless, it is what it is. But all things to consider. On the next episode of the show, we dive into the running back position preview. That's coming up probably the latter part of this week, so be sure to stay tuned. That's going to wrap up this episode of the show. Everyone have a great start to your week. We'll see you right back here very soon.